Hi, this screencast is going to walk through helping you understand Webform plugins. My name is Jake Rockwitz. I'm known as Jay Rockwitz on the web. I'm a Drupal developer and software architect. I built and maintain the Webform module for Drupal 8. What's a plugin? Well, plugins are small pieces of functionality that are swappable. This is a concept in Drupal. It's just a discrete little piece of code that does something. I mean, that's like the most basic way to do it. But, you know, something, in Drupal, this is important to kind of break down plugins. They're reusable, they're standardized, and they're extendable. That's kind of like the three concepts I kind of stick to is, and I think the extendable is really important. Like there's a standard API form, you define an interface, and then you can kind of work off those plugins. And I think this is important when people start thinking about extending the Webform module, if they need a certain feature. Um, so the Webform module is driven by three plugins. The first one is the Webform Element plugin. By the way, this is a little technical, but if you're not technical, this is okay. This just gives you how things are broken down. So, a form element. Webform Element plugin makes it possible to take Drupal's form API elements and makes them available to the Webform module and lets you define the default properties, custom validation, display formatting, any little nuance around how that element's integrated into the Webform module. And I'm gonna walk you through kind of the report that'll show you kind of how elements are working. Handlers are, how data is being submitted. Like when someone submits data, how emails are being sent or remote post external applications. And this is a very common place for people to be extending the Webform module and doing custom integrations. You would create a handler. Um, the third is less likely for people to be doing much with because it's just if you need to export all your submissions into a CSV, like a spreadsheet or Google, you'd use an exporter, and that just controls the formatting of building a table. And if you do need custom nuances to your spreadsheet, like even if you want to custom design it, you can extend the table exporter and give it a custom table style. It's less likely people are going to use it. I really think the middle one, handlers, is what people are going to spend most of their time on in extending the Webform module. And I'll demo it. So this is a clean install. I'm not going to demo how to code plugins, by the way. I'm going to demo that they exist. And there's a tab called plugins, and it's a way to track them. And so one thing is it tells us that there's 78 elements available, and there's this giant table, and there's a small screen, so if you have a big screen, you can see things better. But it just gives you the overview, how it's structured. And the example, I mean, I like, by the way, this is a developer-centric thing because it's showing the class hierarchy. And for example, checkboxes are web form elements that extend a Boolean base element, kind of because it's a yes or no value, and then it creates a checkbox. Um, this column is the web info is just kind of, is it a root element? Can it support multiple values? Does it have a default key? So just little properties. By the way, it's the annotation being brought out. This is to help as you're developing plugins just to see what's going on. If I run into bugs, I'll come here. It's not often. I want to emphasize that. But what one nice feature is, and so we'll keep going. It tells you the element info. Is it an input? If it's a container, it'll say that. It also lists the properties that are available for the element. What's in bold is what's translatable. Very useful for debugging translating elements. I use it for specifically that. What format? What similar elements? This is this nuance I've never talked about it, but you can change your element type after it's created if there's a related element. So for example, you can change a text area to a text field if you needed to. And then it also just tells you, who's providing it, what module, how it's integrated into the web form, who's integrating it. There's kind of these two concepts that there's a form API element provided by CAPTCHA, and that CAPTCHA element is integrated into the web form module by the web form module. And finally, there's this test tab. I'm going to kind of jump over here and pick something that works kind of well. Well, you know what? Let's do text field, because then the test tab just makes it easy to test the element and just gives you an idea of how it's working. So this is the render text field, the source. This is the actual PHP render array that's being displayed. This is the default values. This is what if you're editing the source. I went in and said, this is a text field. And by the way, it's all the settings. Outside of the Webform UI, we're just focusing on that element. I've customized it. I get a preview of it. It's just a way to test things and get, kind of play with new elements. I don't use it that often, but it's worth knowing it's there. Going to handlers and exporters, it's a lot simpler because now we're just getting an overview. Here's our handlers. Here's all the annotation data around it. The ID, the label, the description, whether it supports conditional logic, who's providing it. And by the way, this is more for developers to understand what's going on. And when you start looking, there's examples of these in the Webform module as submodules, and it has documentation. Some handlers process data, and some handlers don't ignore data coming in. It just depends if it needs it to be processed. It's a little fine nuance. I like cardinality. Some handlers should only be added once. You only need to add one debug handler per form. Therefore, you can only add it once, and then it goes away, that option. That's useful if you're doing CRM integration. You can add the cardinality to be 1 to only have one instance of that CRM integration. Not that common, but you get the idea. And by the way, you can jump to configure these and turn them on and off right here. I'm going to go to exporters. Same thing. Here's our exporters. There's not much going on with exporters because a lot of it is just formatting code. But it just tells you, if you've installed exporters, you can get a quick summary of what's been installed. I'm going to keep going. So this is a big thing for Drupal 8. I mean, some people are new to Drupal 8, some people are from Drupal 7, and it's important. Plugins are the new hooks for Drupal 8. This is how we extend things in Drupal 8. And the Webform module has been very focused on providing plugins for most functionality that you can extend. Most of the extendability is in plugins. There are a few hooks, but they're pretty general. And, some exercises with plugins, like, review the text element plugin. If you're a developer, go dig into the code and look at these classes and see what's going on. Text field's a good starting point. There are examples. Remote post plugin is extremely useful because it just shows you that's like this generic plugin to do any integration with a CRM. In many cases, you're going to have to write your own plugin if you're doing a CRM integration, and that's just a good starting point to give you how it's broken down. One example is there's a dedicated method to post data. And if you're doing any type of integration, you should always have a dedicated post method. Makes it a little easier to test and see things. And, look at the table export plugin. And finally, if you're a developer, you should create a Webform Element plugin. Get familiar with it. By the way, you can take a text field and extend that, create a new plugin, call it My Text Field, and set all the defaults for that text field. So whenever it's inserted, it behaves a certain way, looks a certain way. It's kind of a nice little feature. That's it for now. You can learn more about me at jrockwitz.com. I hope you have fun playing with the Webform module, and take care.